Okay, welcome to arrays. We're going to have to be using some arrays for phase 3, and since arrays are completely different than they should be or they were in Java, I thought we would just run over some basics on arrays and ActionScript. Now, don't forget you have lots of different files. You have a rock training manual, a bullet training manual, a ship training manual, but right now I'm going to be talking about your actual game, the main timeline, fruit, stage, whatever you want to, however you want to call that thing. That is your boss. He's going to kind of be the center of everything, and since everyone's going to be added to that main timeline, everybody can quickly and easily access things on it because they can just call root dot whatever. So here you will want to make some arrays to keep track of things. I would suggest an array of rocks and an array of bullets. And again, we're on the main timeline in the code layer, and you've declared these two arrays. Now arrays, notice, are totally different than what you're used to, how you're used to declaring them in Java. They're more like an array list, and notice you don't ever give a data type when you're declaring an array in ActionScript. You don't say that this array holds ints, or this array holds strings, or this array holds a certain type, which takes some weird getting used to. Now, most importantly, what I need you to understand, there's your main timeline. Nothing's on there. I created a rock. If I run this, no rock. Now, that's because he's not part of the main timeline yet. Here's what I need you to understand. When you place this rock, or whatever rock you have, into the array, that is different, completely different than getting him on the screen, than getting him on the main timeline. So you have pushed him into the array. There is no rock here. He is not on the screen. That is totally different. Now notice again that you add somebody into an array by saying push, which is different than .add in the array list, which is different than using the square brackets in an array in Java, but it is .push is the way that you get somebody in there. Now, just because I have him in the array does not mean that he is on the main timeline, does not mean that you can see him on the screen. Your job is to call add child on the main timeline so that you can get this rock on there. There are some different options for that. One way is to do it right here. This is referring to the main timeline. So I could say I would like to add that child. Now there is a rock on my screen. But notice, that is totally separate and apart from putting him into the array. And just for fun, if you wanted, you could refer to him, I don't know, I gave him a name R, but now he is also Rock Sub-Zero. That is the same person. Two names, same person. Now, that is one way to accomplish getting him on the screen. Something very important that you need to know is I have this little trace statement to prove a point. When you birth this rock, at the moment he is constructed, that is way before you have added him to the main timeline. And it's important that that sequence of events is important, because when you call this rock's constructor, that will send you here, that will call his constructor. At the time he is constructed, I traced his root. He has no root, he has no parent. Those things are both null for him at this moment because he is not attached to anybody. Even though I go on to attach him later, at the moment he's born, he has absolutely no root, no parent. Now, another way to accomplish this, optionally, you could pass the root into the constructor of the rock. So that then the rock could have his hands on the root, could add himself there. Now, that just means that you would have to accept a parameter. I'm sure my syntax is going to be wrong, so don't laugh when I get an error. And then I could say, when I'm being born, I could take that thing and instruct him to add myself onto there. Beautiful. And now notice he's on the screen. And now in the constructor, I actually am able to talk about a root. So just be very careful when you're trying to access your root in the main timeline. Even here, if I had done that before I added the child, my root is null at that moment because I have not been added. So it's kind of risky business when you're trying to access your root in the constructor or whatnot. So you can do it however makes the most sense to you, or however you like that. But now, that is the basics of using array. An array, please notice that pushing adds to the array. Now, unfortunately, array syntax altogether is completely different than what we are accustomed to, but luckily this ActionScript has some somewhat useful reference material out there on the web. Now, it tells you everything that you can do to an array. One of the very interesting things that you could use would be this index of function. That won't let me highlight it, but you could ask an array, what is the index of this thing? So if you happen to have the rock in your hand, you could ask the array, where is this rock in the array? And that may be your best friend later. You can add last index of, there's all sorts of interesting things. Now, pop is a way to remove from an array, but pop probably won't be useful to us because we're not guaranteed that the person we want to take out is the last person that we have put in as we are taking people out of the array. And then there's slice and splice. I'm really proud they named one slice and one splice. Notice slice, why can I not highlight anything the way I want to? Slice does not modify the original array. Splice actually removes things. So splice is your key to getting somebody out of the array. When you splice something, you would have to tell it where did you want to start removing things. Like start removing at this particular index. Then you could say how many things you want to be removed. So that is a very strange way to remove things, but that is how you speak to an array in ActionScript. You could say, I would like to splice. Now, the only index that actually exists here is index 0. And I could say, I want to remove start splicing at index 0, splice out one person. Now, what I need you to understand is just because I have taken him out of the array, as you'll see, he is no longer in the array. The size of that array is 0, but that does not mean that he has been taken off the screen. So just like adding and adding to the array was not the same thing as adding to the screen, you would probably want to, in some fashion, and this is probably something that you would not want to do here on the main timeline in your game. It's probably something the rock would want to handle himself, but the important thing is that you will need to remove child. Now, I need to know what child I'm trying to remove, so I would say at this moment he is still in the array because I haven't spliced him out yet, so I can still talk to him in terms of his name in the array. So I could say take off this rock, then rip him out of the array, which are two different things. Now he no longer is displayed on the screen because he's been taken off. So please understand, lesson number 1, arrays are weird and have strange functions. Lesson number 2, the array on the main timeline is not the same as the display that you're seeing, and you're going to have to juggle those back and forth. So please feel free to take a look at all the array methods that you can need. You can access that on the internet, but there are definitely splice, push, maybe index of could be handy, and there are some others that you might want to familiarize yourself with, and you are ready to deal with rocks.